What are you gonna do?
See where this thing's leaking.
See where it's leaking? So where do you start?
Since we don't have soft jaws, you know, just got a rag in there. Makes it way easier if you take the spacers out. I got a special tool for that. But on these old school Custers, you can see on here there's 3 bolts, right? See this one here's got a little dot next to it? All right, see a little dot machined right there? Yeah. That one there, this bolt is longer, and it goes inside, and there's a little wedge that holds the seal cap in place. You'll see when I take it apart.
Okay.
You gotta watch out for these, because see where that little dot is? See those 2 little snake bites right there? Right? If there's any pressure inside this shock, it'll shoot oil out at you. It's a good time. I don't know. I didn't realize. I'll use that for where's going? I'll have to see more of the Yeah. All right, so you can see this is the piece I was talking about, right? So that bolt there with the dot goes through there, and
the magic piece.
When you, all these pieces are very hard to find. I had to source some of those for Mike's Bronco. Very hard to find those. We call them the magic piece.
What's this piece up here?
What's that?
What's this piece?
This is the piston, right? This is what makes everything work. So that's what we were talking about earlier, is these are the valve shims, right? So all these holes, oil goes through there. So you gotta kind of think of it backwards, right? When the shock is operating, this piston is going to be on the compression, you know, like when the vehicle's coming down, it's gonna be pushing up through the fluid, right? So oil's going through these ports here, and it's coming out these bottom ones. So the compression stack is the one on the bottom, and on a rebound stroke, it's moving this way, so it's going through these little ports, it just sneaks around there, and then it comes out those little guys there, right? So this is the compression stack, this is rebound stack. You can totally change the vehicle by, you know, changing any of these old school pistons, the Custers, they call these the shim breakers, because if you can see this big pocket right here, what happens is on compression stroke, it's actually forcing this shim stack down into that port, and over time it'll crack them here and here. On later pistons, they actually added a little bridge right here, but we got a trick for that. So the way that these older Custers work, right, you got this little adjuster wheel down here. There's a threaded piece inside here, right, and the shaft is hollow. So coming up here, so inside here, we just have this little guy, which is just a little brass plunger. But inside here is literally just a piece of brake line, right? So the shaft is hollow. There's a little adjuster wheel down here. The piece of brake line just pushes this little plunger up and down, right? And it seals off that little port inside there. I don't know if you can see in there, right? So what happens is, when this thing's on the top, oil can bypass through there and come out these ports. And when you turn this in, this moves this up and it seals off that orifice, right? So that's the whole adjustment mechanism on these shocks right here. It's just an old school free bleed orifice adjustment.
So you're just replacing parts that are needed right now?
We're just doing, that's just like overview of function. This is, we're just replacing the seals on this guy. This one here, on these older Custers, this one right here is usually a source of leaks, because, I'll show you in a second. Right? So that's a little magic piece right there. You can see it's got like a little wedge cut on it. So it fits in that little in that little hole right there. And when you tighten it, it just, that's why it's the magic piece. So when you tighten it, it just expands that and it locks that thing in there. Okay, so inside here, there's just a bunch of these little shaft seals, all right? So you can see a thing that makes the shaft seals leak. See how the shaft is all beat up and scarred from rocks hitting it over the years? Every time that thing goes past the seals, it just scratches them just a little bit. And that makes them leak. But this guy right here, okay, so for some reason, the design of these, there's this one little O-ring in here, but you can see, I don't know if you can see in there, but you can see the inside's definitely all scarred up. But that's because every time you put them together, these bolts have to go through that one O-ring, right? So these threads always tear them up. But we got a fix for that.
Do you just put tape on the screw and put it through and take tape off or something?
No, I just put more O-rings in it.
Oh yeah.
Well, instead of this stupid little aluminum spacer, I was at the hydraulic store one day and I found it's called an X-ring instead of an O-ring. And if you think of, you know, like one of these, like if you think of just like a regular O-ring, you know, I mean, it's an O this way, but if you looked at its side profile this way, it's also round, right? So the X-ring is like this O-ring, except the profile isn't a little X. It's like a square seal.
Okay.
So
You're gonna throw that in there?
yeah.
Okay.
We messed around with Kusters a lot back in the day because we were broke and they were cheap. But the nice thing is, let's see, everything. The cylinders, the pistons, it's all the same as King Shot. So if you had to, you know, like totally rebuild a set of Kusters, all the parts are still available and you can actually convert them to the newer style King Shot. So, I mean, for back in the day, for old, inexpensive customs, you can't beat them. They're great. Cool. You can definitely make them more good.
20s, and what do we got on rebound?
These are 12s.
That's probably good.
Right, so if you measure that, 12 thou. Yeah,
Right.
see right there?
Right.
But I'm just thinking, you know, well, I don't know for this thing, I don't know if you're gonna put that kind of like cycles on it. But the old Kurt LeDuc trick is to actually take and these first couple shims,
Yeah.
cut them in a triangle,
Uh-huh.
you know? So that way it's not overlapped as much and it's not, I mean, you can see how much it see how much it bends that down?
Right.
So on compression, it's actually pushing this shim into that port. Because on the later ones, they had a bridge in between here, so it supported it.
Yeah.
You know?
Right.
So these pistons, these are the old shim crackers.
What do you call them?
Shim crackers.
Shim crackers.
Yeah.
Word.
I don't know, it's up to you.
I'm gonna leave it up
I think
to you.
it should be fine for, I mean, you guys aren't doing like,
We're just gonna do some mega sends and couple hot laps or something. Oh, and rock crawling, really important. Most important part.
all right. I wish I had
at 'em?
2.5 bump studs because I even brought low flow pistons.
Oh, whoa.
But those
That
are the
one's
ones.
tight.
Those are the ones for bump stops when you don't want the thing to bottom out.
Yeah.
That's good. Well, I don't know. You want to put? I mean, you want this thing to like pop wheelies?
Yeah. So what are you gonna change?
Rebound.
What?
Rebound.
To what?
It's got 12s. I mean, you want like, if we put 8s in it, it'll be like wheelie.
That's probably better.
Okay. We'll put 8s in it then. Like on the Kusters, all the clickers are operational on these.
Uh-huh.
So you have adjustment on the clickers,
Right.
you know?
So it can slow it down.
Oh yeah.
So it'll be wide open is 8.
Well,
The clicker all the
it's
way
not-
out is
so the thing with the
8,000?
free bleed, right?
Yeah.
Is so it totally bypasses the piston, but it bypasses going both ways.
Right.
So it's a free bleed, you know, so it's both ways. So the adjustment on the Kusters isn't a directional adjustment.
Oh, it's compression and
So it's
rebound.
compression and rebound. So if you want to tighten the shock up all the way around, you know, turn that thing in.
Yeah.
And if you want to loosen it up all the way around, take it out.
Okay.
So that's
So you're gonna set it up to where it's all the way open, right? So we can basically crank from there.
Well, yeah, all the way open, it's going to be, it's as soft as it can possibly be, but it's both ways.
Right.
Compression and
But then we're only relying on 20s and 8s.
yeah.
Right. Okay.
So that's why, I don't know, you know, I mean, I feel like a two-door Explorer, this thing's already going to pop a nose.
Yeah.
So if you want to go to 10s, we can go to 10s.
10's probably a good compromise. Yeah.
Because I mean, 8s, I'm telling you, 8s is just going to be like slap release everywhere.
Right. Yeah, let's do 10.
So what part of the process is this?
So these Kusters are kind of a pain with the thread end design. I'm just setting the dividing piston right now. So inside this canister right here, there's a piston that floats, right? So when the shock compresses and extends, the shaft's got to go inside so it displaces a certain amount of fluid, and it's got to go somewhere. So inside here, there's a little bit of oil, and then a piston, and then this is all a nitrogen cavity, right? So the height of where that thing is in the reservoir is pretty important, so we got to set that. So it's a pain on these shocks because you have to bleed everything out and then put this in and then set the dividing piston and, you know, like make sure it's at the right height versus like the newer style shocks, you know, like when we pull those off, we can examine that further.
Do a little comparison.
Yeah. So the process on this one is definitely much more involved. But that's what you want. Basically, if the dividing piston is set, well, I mean, semi-correctly, and there's no oil in the shock, when you charge it, it should extend fully, you know, like you heard it hit the top out, you know, it just stops. So that's what we want.
So one down, one to go of this style shot.
Yeah, so this one's good.
Cool.
Can I ask you a question? What does it mean by 100%? You keep saying 100% efficiency.
So, I don't know, you don't have anything with like real links on it, but so there's a thing called the motion ratio, right? And that is, so see how this link arm right here, right?
Yeah.
So this thing's gonna swing in an arc.
Okay.
Right? So if that's your fixed pivot and this is your movable side,
Yeah.
if the shocks here are connected to the axle, it's a 1-to-1 or, you know, like 100% efficiency type setup. The further you move the shock up here, right? Like imagine if you move
Oh,
it up here,
okay. Yeah.
It's gonna take twice the spring and twice the valving to control the movement here, but it's gonna have half the shaft speed, right? Here, it's going as fast as it can possibly go because it's connected to the rear end. However fast the rear end goes, that's how fast the shocks are going.
Sick.
Right? But it takes the least amount of spring and the least amount of damping to control everything. But the problem is sometimes it's too much. Like the shaft speeds are too high, the spring rate's
Cook
weird.
shocks. It just boils them. It's like
More speed means more heat in them. So most like trophy trucks and big pre-runners and stuff, they want more travel. The other problem is you're kind of limited on travel here.
Yeah.
Because I mean, King makes like a 22 or a 24 inch stroke shock for monster trucks, but I mean they'd be like mounted up at the roof.
Mm-hmm.
So what everybody does is they run a real long trailing arm, you know, usually like 50 to 60 inches, and they mount the shocks in the middle. So like a 2-to-1 motion ratio with the shocks mounted in the middle, even if you had a 16-inch shock or an 18-inch shock, you're getting 30 inches of wheel travel out of it. Plus the shaft speeds are way lower. It's just, that's been the setup that everybody's kind of like gone to on bigger stuff with more travel. But for something like this, you're kind of limited, so we got to valve it accordingly. So he didn't have the springs exactly I wanted, so we got 500s, but 500 over 350 is only at a 200-pound combined rate. So we're just gonna run the secondary stops way up, you know, and I think it should be good. It'd be like running a 200-pound single rate.
200-pound single rate.
Well,
Wow.
but then we can move the coil nuts down and, you know, tune where the secondary engagement comes in.
What were you looking for? How much pressure?
Well, this regulator set at 150 PSI, so that's pretty much our baseline on all these, like the bump stops, the coilovers, the bypass. Start everything at like 150.
So the purpose of the bump stop is just force.
It's just the last few inches of suspension travel, you know, it just absorbs any of the forces before they become absorbed into the chassis.
Vince, what'd you just say?
All right, Roy. Let me tell you how show business works. You got to get ready, and then when he says action, you do what you do best.